Are you ready, Onej?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Paul Goldstein. I am the chair of the Waterfront Arts and Cultural Committee, which is here tonight for our February 18th, 2025 meeting. Thank you all for being here. And let me just acknowledge just a couple of people. I want to thank Onej for all she does. She's the person behind the screen up there, and she puts these meetings together, and she does a great job. Thank you, Onej. And I see Alice Blank, the co-chair of the board, is at the meeting. Good evening, Alice. Good to see you. So without further ado, I will throw it over to the co-chair of this committee, and that is Andrew Zelter. Thank you, Andrew, for being in the room and chairing the meeting, and I'll be here on a remote basis. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Paul. And just before we jump into the agenda, we have published an agenda with 3 items. One of the items is not going to happen this evening. So if you're here for that primarily, up to you if you want to stay. That item is the Seaport Museum update. That will be rescheduled for a later meeting. So that leaves us with 2 topics for this evening. And let's start first with the New York Climate Exchange. And we're going to receive an update from Stephen Hammer, CEO of the Exchange.
Thanks very much. Should I stand or sit or
Whichever you prefer.
what's your preference? Should I go to the table?
Yes.
So I can be on the screen, is that better? Okay. Well, thanks very much. Hello, everybody. Good evening. Thanks for the opportunity to come meet with you. A few things we want to do today is to update you on the design of the campus and where things are at on that. I brought one of my colleagues, Andrew Winters, will be doing most of the presentation on that. But I wanted to step back and give you kind of a broader overview. I know it's been a while for many people. They haven't heard a lot about what the Exchange has been doing. I'm here to tell you it's actually a fair amount. I'm very pleased with where things are standing, both in terms of the build out of the organization, but also as we're getting some of the programming moving. One of the things that I encourage everybody to do is to come to our website, nyclimateexchange.org, and you can sign up to receive program updates. And that's a great way for us to communicate about what's going on. We also use other social media channels, a lot on LinkedIn, just kind of updating folks on our programming, what our partners are doing, et cetera. So if we could bring up the slide deck. Yeah, if you could go to the next one. Thank you. So you'll recall that the vision that led to the Exchange was to create a hub for climate engagement on the island. A center for climate solutions is the term that the Trust for Governors Island used. And we're really trying to take that to heart. The thing that we're here to do is to build on what already exists, either on the island, because we've got the Harbor School, we've got Billion Oyster Project, we've got other organizations that are already engaging on climate in different ways. And we're trying to add value to that, plus what else exists around New York City and internationally, really internationally, because what we have the opportunity to build here in New York really can have both local value as well as international value add. The purpose, and we talk up on the screen, you can see that it's the intent as part of this center is to bring together a variety of different interrelated activities. So first we have the educational programming, you'll recall, and I'll go into the partners in greater detail, but we have many academic partners trying to train the next generation of climate aware individuals, climate experts, climate researchers, climate entrepreneurs. Those are some of the things we're going to try and do through our educational programming. But we're also going to have research going on out on the island. It's a really amazing location to do climate-related research focused on either the atmosphere or on marine conditions in the harbor. We want to build on that. We have the opportunity to link to urban climate researchers in other parts of the world as well. That's something that we're trying to talk about in the next couple months, about how we can bring local research capacity together and begin to build out the relationships nationally and internationally. But you'll also recall that the city now has a green economy action plan. And central to that is trying to create, people who can support the energy transition, the adaptation to climate impacts, and trying to help facilitate workforce development activities, as well as trying to create the next generation of entrepreneurs and businesses who are going to be developing the climate solutions that we need in the coming decade. And then what I'll spend a bit more time talking about is the programming. And that's things that are aimed at trying to engage the community, engage school children, engage professional groups, engage businesses around the city, engage the diplomatic community that's so prominent here in New York, all with the goal of how can we identify what are the solutions that we need to move forward on rapidly and at scale. Solutions that are beneficial both to New York, but can have impacts elsewhere as well, around New York, around the metro region, but also in other parts of the world, because so many of the conditions that we find ourselves here in New York, that we're a coastal city, we've got 520 miles of coastline, we're crowded, a dense urban environment. There's a lot of learning there in terms of the transition of the infrastructure that we have and how we make it ready for the climate impacts to become more and more prominent in the coming years. Those are problems that other cities are facing as well. And so to the extent we can create a living laboratory that really seeks to try out ideas here in New York, learn from what the city has already been doing. And as someone who's both lived in New York for the better part of 40 years, but also studied urban climate policies, New York City has been a real leader on these issues for several decades now. You were talking about the benefits of the transportation system and the investments that were made over a century ago. New York has long been in the vanguard of these kinds of things, and being able to talk about what New York has done, what New York can teach the rest of the world, is really going to be an important part of what we're trying to do at the Exchange as well. If you could go on to the next slide. So one of the things that also sets the Exchange apart, and this is a coalition that was pulled together by Stony Brook University. Thank you. Probably easier to swim. When in the response to the Trust's RFP, Stony Brook pulled this coalition together involving academic institutions, private companies, as well as community organizations of many different types. So whether they are cultural institutions, including museums, whether they're local chambers of commerce from each of the boroughs, workforce development groups, environmental justice groups. This is an extraordinarily rich array of expertise and types of engagement that we can capitalize on and really build on. Because if you hear me go back to one point more than anything else today, it's this notion that what we're trying to do at the Exchange is to build what already exists, to really help accelerate the deployment of solutions, to identify new solutions, yes, but so many ideas, we know what the answers are, what we can do better on, but they're not moving at the speed or scale required. And when you have the perspectives of these incredible resources, and when I look at this list, we've segmented them a certain way, that you've got the universities up on top, and you've got the corporations over on the right, and then community organizations. But I think about it differently, because if you think about a university and the type of expertise that they might bring to the table, whether it's on public health or engineering of solutions or the latest science helping us understand what's happening in terms of climate impacts, or forecasting what might become more problematic in the future. If you think about the policy or legal or regulatory environment we have to navigate, if you think about the fact that we need to communicate more clearly, because one of the things that scientists have often been challenged by is that they don't speak in ways that the public can really easily understand. And if you look across the different types of schools or expertise that we can tap at the exchange, it's expertise on all of those different domains. So part of what we're trying to do is make sure that, again, if we're looking at solutions, it's not just from an engineering lens, or if we're looking at a problem, it's not just from a scientific lens, but we're trying to figure out what are the financial implications? How do we communicate this more clearly? How do we create the enabling environment in terms of policy to actually move these ideas forward in a systematic way? Bringing all of that to bear, sitting at a table together, trying to figure out how do we advance on these solutions. And so you can look at the university as a microcosm of what we're saying we can do even in a more compelling way when we bring business to the table. We've got the chambers of commerce from, again, each of the 5 boroughs. Plus, we've got multinational corporations who are thinking about these issues in many different geographies. We've got environmental justice groups who are constantly reminding us that we need to be putting people at the heart of the conversation and taking account of their needs. One of the things I often say is I can speak to a lot of different meetings I've been in where the quote unquote experts are talking about the solutions, and then when you have the public get up, they talk about the flooding in their basement. And that's the reality, right? They don't have the jobs that they might be able to get linked to climate transformation. They're dealing with climate impacts already in terms of high heat, in terms of more extreme weather events, flooding in their basements that's affecting not just residences, but also businesses and loss of inventory. So how can we take account of all of those perspectives as we're crafting what we work on, how we think about things, how we try and engage people, and ultimately what we see as the most viable solutions going forward? So, that is really fundamental. It's fundamental to our model, that bringing different perspectives to the table, ensuring we're trying to take account of these perspectives and understand these different realities that everybody's trying to navigate in their own worlds. But, I've already begun to allude to this. The partners have all made a commitment that they wanted to be part of the exchange because they wanted to be part of that Center for Climate Solutions. They wanted to deliver that value back to the communities they're already working with, locally around New York City, or the businesses that they're, who are part of the chamber, or the entrepreneurs who are trying to create those new businesses and put those new solutions, on the table so that we can capitalize on new ideas. Taking account of all of that, leveraging all we can from our partners in many different ways, but again, always with the idea that when you have the collection of assets that we can bring to the table, we can and should do more than settle for the ideas or the solutions that are already out there. But again, that may mean that we do things faster, or we do things not just in New York, but we try and share that information quickly with other cities around the country or around the world. We're very interconnected in terms of the groups that we're trying to build relationships with. Again, you may be aware there are networks of mayors and networks of city officials who've been banding together to try and share information. New York has been extraordinarily prominent in the development of some of those networks. And we want to, again, tap into some other ones that may link more towards the financial community. And again, here we have access to Wall Street in ways that we think it's not just about this global conversation. And if you're in climate world, people are often talking about the billions or trillions of dollars that are needed. But in reality, it's about the dollars that are needed in individual buildings to improve the heating system, so it's a cleaner heating system. It's about preventing that flooding. Those are much smaller dollars, but when you add them up, they amount to a lot of money, and that creates opportunity, again, for Wall Street banks or other financial institutions to get involved. And those are the kinds of folks that we also want to bring to the table. So again, thinking very expansively about what we're trying to do, a strong commitment to working with communities, taking account of community concerns, and really bringing all of this expertise to bear that we can. Now, in terms of the things that we're going to focus on, we've got what we've identified as pillars. So, they're very broad categories. Again, we're a coastal city, so we want to pay attention to the oceans. We want to pay attention to energy, both the energy supply, but also how energy is used in buildings and in industries. We want to talk about financial solutions, community resilience, whether it's heat or flooding. Both of those can have adverse health impacts on communities around the city and elsewhere. And then the built environment. Again, what is New York City? 1 million buildings. We have a lot, and the infrastructure, again, that helps a city of this size and complexity. How do we keep it going? How do we improve it in ways that, really don't blow our budgets and make, become out of reach, but do things in a way that takes account of what can we afford today? What do we need to do first if we have a limited budget? What do we need? What do we do next? So trying to be very thoughtful and strategic about all those things. The other thing that we're really focused on is this incredible toolkit. I talked about the expertise that the partners bring to the table, but we think that collectively we have access both to educational expertise, research expertise, training. But some of the things that New York is doing, that has access to that other cities really don't, is the ability to tap into the arts and culture institutions around the city. One of the things that, and I've been working on these issues, for several decades. My first job was with sanitation here in New York City. And, one of the things that we've often understood is that if we in the policy community or we in the academic community start talking about things, we may get eyes glazing over because we're just not engaging people in the right way. Sometimes you need different approaches to do that. And so we're really excited about how some of the schools of communication, how some of the schools of the arts are trying to get involved in this as a new way to reach new audiences. And when we get them in the door and we can engage them, then we can begin to have conversations that they may not otherwise have had. So really capitalizing on all of these opportunities we have. Convening is something that everybody has really reinforced as I've talked about the exchange and what we're trying to build here in New York around the world, because you have people coming here. They come here for the UN during September. They come here because they're in meetings with Wall Street. They come here because, again, they're on vacation. And we can capitalize on the fact that people come to New York. We can tap into that expertise, that access to those folks, and put them to bear as part of our program. And then finally, let me just finish by talking about the last year. I've been in the job now for just over 15 months. Most of the team has been here working with me since last May. So we're really just getting the programming up and going right now. Again, really exciting program. Let me just talk about one thing that we're doing. In a couple of weeks, we're having a conversation involving NYCHA. They had spoken to me several months ago about some of the energy efficiency and quality of life upgrades they wanted to do related to infrastructure in their buildings, right? Heating and cooling systems, et cetera. Well, NYCHA is always operating under a constrained budget, as is any public housing authority in the United States. And there are these things called the carbon credits or the voluntary carbon markets that have been created as a way to help offset the cost or to subsidize investment in certain activities that benefit the climate in different ways. And so they were wondering whether we might be able to assist them by bringing together experts to talk about, would that carbon credit model possibly work given what NYCHA is trying to do? And the experts that I've been talking to so far are very excited. A, they think it's possible, but B, they also think that, when you do something like that in New York, it can create a model, a platform that other housing authorities around the United States can really benefit from as well. And this will lead to, again, direct investments in better heating and cooling systems, for the hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers who live in NYCHA housing. So that's just one example. I could talk about other things we're doing related to the oceans or related to the built environment, but let me stop there. I know you wanted to hear more about the campus, so I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Andrew, and he can introduce to you where things are at in terms of the campus design. I don't know if anybody wants to do any questions or if you want to hold them or.
Let's hold them and get through the
Perfect.
campus
Okay.
first.
Thanks very much.
Great, so just to say that the physical manifestation of all these ideas is the campus, and Governor's Island is the place that we're doing that. You know, we have this idea of this living laboratory, a place that allows all the different kinds of people that Steve is talking about to be able to work together, whether they're professionals, experts, or if they're academics or members of the public, members of community groups. So let me walk you through the campus, but before I do that, I just want to step back for a minute and reflect a little bit about some of the guiding principles that we have when we think about how do you design something and how do you build something in a place so unique as Governor's Island. And so we try to embrace these three project values and have them really be infused throughout our thinking and our design process. The first one is respecting the unique history and landscape of Governor's Island. Many of us working on the project, myself included, are lucky enough to have been working and thinking about Governor's Island for many years. So we know the site very well, respect both its history, but also the vision that the city has for the future. You can't build it as it was. You have to make this new forward-looking vision, which we think we're embracing. So part of that includes the architecture in the historic district, but part of it also includes sort of forward-looking in the public place, which brings me to point number 2, which is the public nature of the island. As everyone here knows, surely this was not a public island for most of its life, but for the last 10, 15 years it has been. And so people, New Yorkers, have really embraced it. So that's one of the reasons we love the site so much, but it's something that we want to build on, we want to enhance. And so when we think about whether it's the architecture, the public spaces, the programming, we believe in the public nature of this site and we want to make it better. And number 3 is we have as our mission sustainability and climate solutions. And so we all know the built environment is not so great at some of the things having to do with the environment. So we're looking to use new materials, pioneer new ideas, make it this living laboratory where we use new materials, new approaches, new technologies, and we invite the public to participate. So as we think about designing it, we sometimes use the word campus, sometimes use the word center. We're really trying to just bring the public in. We don't want this to be an exclusive place that says you're only here if you're invited. This is really meant to reach out to the public. And so we try to do that both through the architecture, the public spaces, the programming, but also through the materiality and through any kind of educational stuff that we do there. So those are our values. Let me talk about the features of the project itself. So there are 3 buildings associated with the project, and I'll walk you through all 3 of them. First one, the research and education building. That includes labs, it includes exhibition and demonstration spaces. Again, part of that mission of trying to reach out to the public and bring them in. It includes classrooms for students, both students that would be at studying here on Governor's Island, but also for a broad range of classes that we would run for, whether it's K through 12 programs or workforce programs or any kind of outreach programs, as well as office and collaboration space. That's building number 1. Building number 2 is a world-class community center. One of the key issues, as Steve mentioned, is communication. How do you take what you're doing and bring it out to the world and get people involved? So we believe that convening bringing people together and using this site here in New York is a really wonderful opportunity. Number 3 is student life. We do intend to have undergraduate students living on the island for a short duration of time to take classes there for a semester at a time. And so creating a student life zone is important to us. And then the last piece, equally important, is the open space. There's 4 acres of public open space roughly within the lease line that we've worked out with the trust, including a waterfront esplanade, which I'll talk about at length here. In terms of where the project sits on the island, that's Yankee Pier on the lower right-hand side. You see that sort of the island was turned on its side, I'm afraid. You see a little bit of Liggett Hall up on the right. So the eastern side of Liggett Hall is the first piece of our project. Second piece, which is obviously in the historic district to the right of Division Road, which you see as the straight road. On the bottom right is building 315, which is a residential building that's right at the ferry landing. And on the left, on the southern side of the Division Road, are the new buildings. Those boomerang-shaped buildings. That's the new the new portion. And let me go through it a little bit more specifically. So what we're talking about for those areas that I talked about before about the program, we have student life located in Liggett Hall. Liggett Hall the first step in sustainable design is to try to use what you have for the purposes that you need. And so Liggett Hall was residential for soldiers, and we reclaim it for residences for students as well as for some of the staff and for some researchers in the lab. And so we're trying to create this residential quad there with the public open space, the courtyard in the center. Right now, that's a parking lot for those of you who know this site. The second piece is research and education. So that building that you see there, that where the arrow leads to, that's a research and education building. It has multiple classrooms, it has laboratories, it has office space, as well as those public exhibition spaces at either end, which are really meant to invite people in to participate in what we're doing. And I'll show you some images of that later. And then the last piece is the convening center, which you see on the waterfront, trying to take advantage of this wonderful waterfront views, the opportunity to really bring visitors to the island and to have them be in this convening space that feels like nothing else in New York City, that really embraces the natural environment and the location of Governor's Island. And again, I'll show you some pictures of that. In addition, one of the most important things is to situate all of this within a series of public spaces that we think bring new activities and new activation to the island. So whether it's the courtyard at Liggett, or whether it's this new waterfront, which I'll talk about, or Yankee Pier Plaza, which is going to be the main entrance to the island when with the ferry landing right there, as well as a new series of planted areas, which we feel are really important in kind of creating this environment. So a series of buildings, the three I talked about, as well as a series of landscapes that tie it all together. In terms of the image of the site, I'll show a couple of images. Obviously, this is the waterfront site. This is the convening building that you see. It's about 2.5 stories tall. Both buildings are covered with a solar canopy. We're generating all the energy we need for that south building through the solar canopy. On the right-hand side, you see the research building, and just beyond it, you see the portion of Liggett Hall that we're looking to renovate for the student life. I'll come back to the waterfront piece in a moment, but one thing I want to emphasize here is that the way we think about the architecture and the design of the building, Division Road really is the division between the historic district, where everything is really rectilinear, all the trees are kind of in straight lines, they're all the same, and the south of Division Road, which has the new park, which is very curvilinear, very organic, very natural feeling. And so thinking about these first new major buildings on the island, really trying to embrace that new side of Governor's Island, this idea of a naturalistic island, a sort of an organic island, trying to think about the natural environment there. And so the buildings are curved, the roof line is curved as well, to try to capture that sense of the curvature of that new park that's there that people really love. This is an image from Yankee Pier. This is not the renovated Yankee Pier. This is an image of what Yankee Pier looks like today. I know that the trust is working to renovate it. One of the things we felt that's most important is to greet people at the island, not with a building, but with a public space, and with a kind of a generous opportunity for coverage, for a cafe, for seating, for ways to, again, bring people into the program of what we're doing without making them feel like it's something that's putting them off. So on the right-hand side is Yankee Pier Plaza, which is a public plaza for everyone, of course. You have the Esplanade going by, and then you have a new opportunity to walk through the campus and through these sites and engage with what we're doing. This is a quick view in Yankee Plaza. If you're looking to the left, you can see there's a garage door that's opened up with an opportunity for people to see what's happening inside. We're looking at benches and seating and all sorts of ways to make this a real great public space. Whether you're interested in what we're doing or not, we still want it to be a public space where people can feel welcome, because that's what it is. And this is a different view of the other side, where we have another garage door that can open up. It's a lab space here for demonstration of new technologies, for classes, for ways for, again, people to engage with what we're doing inside the buildings. You can see the solar canopy coming down to the edge there, generating all the energy. And what you don't see is a geothermal well field, which I'll talk about a little bit later, which also helps to power both buildings. And this is that walkway between the two buildings, where we have all of this infrastructure, the green infrastructure that we're putting in, and it's all housed in a building, and we want to share that with the public. So we want to show that the Geo Exchange is where the geothermal energy wells come up into the building. You can see what's happening there. But again, a series of public open spaces and seating and ways to embrace the public nature of the project. So here's the waterfront again. one thing I want to say about the waterfront, we had gone in, and people may remember this from the original RFP response, is, we had shown a waterfront where people could actually get down to the water, which we desperately want to do, but it is not safe at all to do. We've looked at all the different issues with the harbor there, and unfortunately, this is one of the places where it's not possible, just in Governor's Island in general, and Buttermilk Channel specifically. But as you know, one of the great joys of Governor's Island is the promenade around the perimeter. And so thinking about how do you break through that seawall? How do you allow a better ecology where you can actually have things grow, where you can mitigate some of the wave action and the energy in the harbor with a more naturalistic shoreline, we think is really the way to move into the future for New York's waterfront in general. So we have this opportunity here to build that kind of waterfront. And so the portion that you see on the right, it actually leaves the seawall in place, but it builds a revetment out into the waterfront with ecological planting. And on the left-hand side, we actually cut back into the seawall, and we create a little bit of a lagoon there. You can see it on the next slide where we're actually cut back. You allow people to go for the first time beyond where the edge of the waterfront wall is now, to go out to the edge. So we're looking at ways for people to continue to engage with the water, but really to think about the shoreline as a living shoreline and as a different way, so that you're not just looking at a seawall, but you're really looking at a kind of a living edge. And the same goes for the plantings. I'm not an expert in it, so I won't describe it. There's a series of plantings that would be happening. We actually have to raise the level of the building up. And so you can see there's a series of terraces. All of the plantings have been very carefully chosen to be able to thrive in this marine environment. And finally, a view of the courtyard at Liggett, where you see we're taking out the parking lot and proposing to replace it with a park with a series of areas for people to gather. And you can see on the right-hand side and the left-hand side, these very traditional historic buildings, and white buildings from the 1920s that are part of the historic district and really define that historic district. And for the first time, really creating a parking lot, a real place for people. So before I wrap up, just a couple of things. I said at the beginning, so sustainability and choice of materials and how we run the campus, both from an energy perspective and kind of a design perspective, is really important to us. We want this to be a living model. We want people to be able to come here and see what's happening next in sustainable design. So a couple of our main sustainability goals, our overarching goal is really to have people experience this sustainable community and inspire people for a new vision of how we live. We want people to come to this campus and say, well, why isn't my neighborhood like this? Why haven't I seen a building like this before? Why haven't I seen a landscape or an environment like this before? We really want to show people different ways of building. So we want to drive innovation. That's really important to us, both in terms of our mission, as well as what we think New York can do. Steve talked about the Green Economy Action Plan. I think driving innovation is kind of fundamental to New York's approach to that. This idea of a replicable model, we sit in New York. Other cities have similar issues to what we have, so we want to create this responsible model. Then finally, inspiring and educating. If what happens in our site doesn't get beyond our site, we have not succeeded. And so that's why we're going so out of our way to make it a place that invites people in and to try to expand what we're doing throughout the city, throughout the region, throughout the world. And then finally, we talk a lot about action. So what are the things that we can specifically do? Ensuring climate resiliency in all aspects of the development. I know I don't have to tell you in Lower Manhattan that it's an exposed site, whether you're on the shoreline in Brooklyn or in Lower Manhattan or in Governor's Island. You have to think about resiliency and how do you recover from whatever we're going to be facing over the next 50 years. We want to achieve some leading sustainability certifications. People may be familiar with LEED, not familiar with Living Building Challenge. We're doing something called Living Building Challenge, which takes all of the ideas of LEED, which are engineering based and terrific, and it layers on the experience of the people who are in the building, whether it's the health, the happiness, the sourcing of the materials, but really thinking about every aspect of the built environment and how do you think about its impact on people. And then finally, advocating for sustainability with all the stakeholders and using our site and our platform as an opportunity to really demonstrate what that looks like. So in terms of the profile, the specific profile, what we're looking at is all the buildings, and we want to try to treat the adaptive reuse building, which is Liggett, in a very similar way to the new building. So reducing the embodied carbon, reducing energy use, reducing water use, thinking about waste in a very different way. We're on an island, so anything that we create that's waste has to be shipped off. So we're trying to reduce waste very dramatically. Responsible sourcing materials, I already talked about, and also exclusion of harmful chemicals. And again, that's part of our commitment to the health and safety of people who are working in the building or visiting the building. And finally, I mentioned as well, we are generating all the energy that we need for operating the conference center, and about half the energy that we need for the north building, as well as a new geothermal system which serves both the north and the south building, which dramatically reduces the energy needs. And finally, thinking about the overall site, I've talked about this a little bit, but resilient shoreline is very important to us. Ecological we usually talk about restoration of an ecology, but here we're really creating an ecology. Urban agriculture and introducing a really dense canopy, a forest canopy on Governor's Island. One of the great joys of Governor's Island is all the trees that are out there. And in the southern half of the island, again, I know most of you know this, doesn't have a lot of trees. And so trying to bring that idea of trees and that density of that experience to the south end is important to us. And I'll just wrap up by overview of the schedule. So we are currently heading into design development. We are looking at construction starting, which would require that we do a closing with Governor's Island, Trust for Governor's Island in Q3 of 2026. So we're in design now, and we're going to be in design for the next 16 months or so. And then looking at construction starting in Q3 26 and going for roughly 36 months through Q3 of 29.
That's it. Thank you. Very comprehensive. I'm sure there are a lot of questions. I think I've noted 5 or 6. Can I recommend everyone ask 2 questions until we get around to everyone so that one person doesn't monopolize the Q&A? Okay. Go ahead. Yep, you're up.
Okay, can you speak at all to the restoration of Yankee Pier?
I can't, it's not our project. We're coordinating closely with the Trust for Governor's Island as they are doing the restoration. We're raising the level of the edge by about 1 foot or 2 in order to promote resiliency. But beyond that, I can't really talk about that. I don't know the
And
details.
the second question, maybe you can, the solar panels, how reflective are they?
Solar panels don't tend to be reflective. They have it's an interesting question because they have a glass top. So if the sun is directly on them, they are reflective, but they face up. So people almost never see them. They're not the canted kind that you're used to seeing. But they're on all sorts of different angles. But the material inside is actually black. So if they're in direct sun, you may get some reflection, but we will study that, but we don't anticipate that being a problem.
I'm just hoping that finding sense.
Yes, we will be looking at that.
Okay, thank you.
That's a great question.
With the solar array that you have, and it's curving, it's beautiful. In the design and for future maintenance, will it be easy or there's a plan, so in case you have to replace panels that fail, so it's not, you don't have to go through set up a whole elaborate structure to reach it?
Yes. The answer is yes, yeah. So there are complicated OSHA rules having to do with the angles the maximum angle that you can have. So we meet all of those as well as walkways and access ways. Similarly with the fire department, they require access through the canopy to the roof in order to get into the building. So we're taking all that into account. We're also working with third-party solar providers. We may be the ones who do the solar ourselves, but we may bring in a third party that does solar energy. And so as we get into deeper design, we'll be working with those companies to make sure that it's commercially viable as well.
Because I just remember reading that solar cells, they start to lose their efficiency over time, and you have to replace them. I don't know, how long is it before they need to be replaced?
So a lot of the efficiency loss it has to do with getting grimed up, and they have to be clean. Mostly what you see is people replacing them when you get better technology, right? Right now, solar panels are not that efficient. They're like 18 to 22% efficient-ish, right? So everyone thinks, oh, that'll double pretty soon, but it hasn't doubled in 10 years, but at some point it could. So you'll see, you could see some swapping out, but typically they last for 20, 30 years.
Thank you. Richard?
Yeah, so first for disclosure, I've recently been appointed as a director to the Trust for Governor's Island, and I'm on 2 committees, the Finance Committee and the Climate Exchange Committee. So this is actually my first experience with you gentlemen, and I appreciate that. I have a few questions. So first, given where we are in our national situation, to what degree are we dependent on federal funding?
You want to talk about tax credits?
Yeah, so right now, the only federal funding that that we are looking at is a tax credit of about $23 million associated with the IRA, the Infrastructure Reinvestment Act, which may or may not be reliable. We will have other ways to backfill that. That's the only piece that's projected currently. The other way, I will say there are federal historic tax credits, which, you know, those presumably those could be at risk as well. Everything. So those are the two. And I mean, I don't remember exactly what the tax is. It's 35 million-ish, something like that. So between them, they're about $60 million, somewhere in that neighborhood, 50 to 60 million.
So that could be an impact, a real impact if that happens.
Well, there's nothing like all of us, we're waiting to see what happens. And again, we're monitoring all of this and we're scrutinizing which of the tax credits may apply. Obviously, circumstances will change over the next several years. Perhaps there will be different kinds of money available. There may be money available from the state if the feds aren't there. So we're looking at all of these different sources. In terms of other federal funding that we've been looking at related to the programming, there was a National Science Foundation proposal that we had applied for several months ago that we were notified shortly after January 20th that had been canceled. That was a very small amount of money, but for us, it was dipping a toe into the water, beginning to build out the relationship with our partners, you know, and relying on federal funding. Again, we're paying careful attention to if there are resources. One of the nice things about our very diverse partner base is that we've got 48 partners who are also paying very careful attention to that, and there's a lot of information sharing. We've been alerted by several of our academic partners to date of there's a particular call for proposals from this agency or from that entity. You may wish to take a look at it. So we're constantly sharing information. And again, we expect that to be a possible resource for us in terms of supporting the programming going.
Okay. So you talked about education, you talked about communication, but what I don't see in the partnerships here is any real reference to a communications plan and a communications partner. Given the false narratives that exist around climate and sustainability that have pretty much taken root in this country and could be a real impediment to the work here, have you thought about building a partnership with a media company, with a communications platform in some way, shape, or form that actually brings communications out into the public instead of just sort of the people that know?
So, I mean, the expansion of the partner base is something that we are talking about. We're not actively exploring right now. But part of that is we get to look at what resources we have access to already. We have 5 schools of communication across our 11 academic institutions. We have 5 schools of film and television across our partners. We have excellent corporate communications experts that we can tap at BCG or IBM. And those are conversations that we're happy to have. We've already been exploring that. I think we may be making some announcements in the next few weeks about a partnership with one of the schools of communication and programming we'll be doing targeting school kids around New York City. That'll happen later this spring. So, you know, yes, one of the things that, and when I started my job and I was out talking to everybody, again, they were primarily focused on the logos of the university partners or the corporations. And I said, the thing that's really amazing to me is that it's 9 engineering schools and 8 schools of public health and 6 schools of public policy and 6 law schools, 5 schools of communication, 4 schools of oceanography, 3 schools of atmospheric science. to me, that was where, whether they're based at NYU or Pace or Pratt or a CUNY partner, or Georgia Tech, Oxford, Duke, RIT, we have access to some of the world's great thought leaders on many of these issues. And one in particular that you may be aware of, the Alan Alda Institute for Science Communication out of Stony Brook. The actor Alan Alda created this, I think 15, 20 years ago. And we're in regular communication with them about things that we can do together. So it's very exciting. And again, when I started my job and I would run that litany of, 9 engineering schools, et cetera, everybody always circled back to tell me about those 5 schools of communication, because they all realized that it was exactly what you're saying. It's either the false narrative or it's just the inability to clearly communicate what we're doing and the benefits. And now that's going to be baked into all of our programming from the beginning.
Great. Anyone else in the room? I'll come to you, sir. I just want to get the committee first.
How many people does the convenience, the convent center?
Meeting center, sure, the main hall, I should have said this, I'm sorry, the main hall holds 650 people.
Wow.
And there are a series of side, conference rooms and breakout rooms that, hold 100 or 100 is the largest, and then there's smaller ones, 60, 40, that sort of thing.
That's
Yeah.
big, that's a lot.
But it's very flexible space, so we can have seating for 650, and then we can push all the seating back, and we can have a
Yeah.
big open floor space that we can do other programming. in. So it's intended to be, again, very multifunctional in that
Right.
The max is 650.
Yeah, the max is 650, but it's not a permanent auditorium. All
Well,
the seats can be moved, so you can have kind of flexible space.
650 in the
In the
large
large.
space,
Right.
plus 100, plus 30,
Got it.
30, that
Yeah.
kind of thing. So it can hold more people.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Alice?
Yeah, thanks. Full disclosure, I'm also on the board. I'm appointed to represent the community. Richard is representing Charles Fall. Let's make that clear. Anyway, different perspective potentially. So there were many times before you came on board, and this was terrifically helpful, where the community is engaged with this topic, of course. And I'm just curious going forward, talking about communication with the community and with the ideas that have been presented thus far. Is there any more room for engagement, or is it basically going to be presentations like, for example, it's the design. I see you're going into design development very shortly, it looks like, from that calendar. So schematic is over. And what we see, seeing the heads from, so we're now going into design development.
Yeah, that's the plan.
And so would this be considered a meeting of public engagement for the review? Was this a design, this is not a design development meeting yet, or is it?
We're always happy to take feedback, if that's what you're asking. We are, we're working through a whole series of issues having to do with the program and how we fit various different pieces in, but we're always happy to listen to feedback.
Yeah, I think in listening to feedback would be great to present what it is that you'd be eliciting feedback on,
Yep.
which would be great, because I think, right now we're seeing this whipping curve building and, amoeba shaped elements and all, and it's quite exciting. But what are these things really? How will they get developed? And I think everyone would be really curious as time goes on to begin to see that earlier than late. So I would just encourage that the presentations also begin to look at that, and then bringing the architects, unless you're not the architect.
I'm not the architect, no, SOM of the architect.
SOM, right?
Yeah.
So bringing SOM reps to come and talk about it, because I think a lot of people will have questions about the scale, the size, what is the thinking? And specifically in terms of, again, the broader scope, how is this, and this has been a question we've all had since the beginning, is, how will this integrate with the number of institutes that of course exist already in New York and the number to come, like what's going on in Brooklyn? Roosevelt Island, and Columbia University and all of this. Like, it would be great to have some sense of how you see this being singular and somehow a destination as different, very different from these other, particularly one across the river there. So I don't know if that's something you want to answer tonight, but just something that I think would be helpful for the community to hear.
Happy to talk about, when you say across the river,
You mean
which
Brooklyn
direction?
Terminal
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
Terminal, Navy Yard, what do you think?
Marine terminal?
Right, well, it's not, I mean, the marine terminal isn't yet a environmentally
Right.
sort of long project, but EDC is interested in the.
Right. I
Yeah.
think I think that's a great question, and and you know, Steve will talk about it from a programmatic point of view, but I think the city's goal of using assets for economic transformation is a goal that we fully embrace, but each asset is different, right? So the Navy Yard, what does Navy Yard have? About 4 million square feet of space under roof, right? And so the kinds of things they can do there are very different. If you're doing, you know, let's say a tech accelerator, or you're kind of creating that sort of environment, that's not a sort of thing that you're naturally going to do on Governor's Island on day one, because we don't have that amount of space. And so what we're thinking about is those 3 sites as an ecosystem. How do you, if you have the Navy Yard doing one thing, if you have the Army Terminal with all of its lab space, we've got certain kinds of very specific labs, but we have convening, we have education, we see it as a kind of a place where people can all come together and share ideas and bring things together, that we work in concert, not in conflict with these other kinds of things, right? It's because we have it's a very different kind of a place, and we don't see it in competition with those guys. We see it as building on.
Right, well, that's a very exciting and to your advantage, hopefully.
Yes.
Well, and partly, I mean, again, I just want to differentiate, you know, the Navy Yard or Army Terminal versus what we can accommodate in terms of, if you're a startup business, each has its link to the entrepreneur world. We are not going to be a place where you can just plug in your tech, try it out, and, you know, or build something, because that's not, first off, you wouldn't want to have to bring everything over on a boat all the time. We're not going to have the kind of power grid. We're trying to live within the envelope of what the panels can generate. We want to make sure that we're doing the kind of activities that are appropriate given the sustainability concerns that we're baking into the design. So it's fundamentally some different activities that are much more, I'll call it industrial. We're more on the research, on the education, and on the convenience side of that.
That's helpful to hear. So I would only say, just as we go forward, if we can have, I'm looking a little over at Sarah, that we could have the architects come again, you know, and sort of dive into the actual program and the buildings itself and landscape and all, to really better understand this vision a little bit more micro, particularly as you're already developing it. So thank you. That's great. That's it for me.
Great, thanks, Alice. Rosa.
Nice to see you again. Question, following up on the architecture and the design of the space. Since you are really trying to push the envelope about what building technology is in terms of sustainability and human engagement with it, I'm wondering how you are going to bridge the communications side of that, like with anything new, the usefulness for people, the educational aspect of it for people is like really interesting to try to unlock. And I think that's a hurdle that we frequently face with anything that's new technology. And and so part of that is wondering, like, not only the opening up of the actual building with the garage doors, which I love, and I hope that you do as many places as you can, and actually like come and sort of spill outdoors, which then invites people who are wandering by to sort of come and engage. But then also like things like, I mean, could we walk along the roof? Could it literally become a hiking trail where you can learn about like how do solar panels work? Like how do the connections work? How does that get stored into a battery? How does that get utilized in the building? I mean, to be able to see like literally from point A, B, C, D, how that all works would be incredibly fun for me as an adult, but I would think mostly for kids to understand, oh, this is like the adventure of like energy, right? Or the
Solar roller coaster.
Yes.
We totally agree with that. 100% agree. I wish I had an answer for you now about how we were going to accomplish that, but I don't.
Just
But
say
it is-
yes.
but it is- Yes, we're going to do that. Yes, no, that is something that's very much on our radar screen.
Okay.
It's not just about building a building and saying, well, come in and look at the building, right? It's about engaging people. And
Yeah.
so that question of how do you communicate, how do you engage people is
Yeah.
something that we really need to take on. And to be frank with you, we have not had the opportunity to do that yet, but it's very much on our radar screen. And it's something we're very passionate about, right? We're going to be using technologies here that aren't used anywhere else. For
Yeah.
example, I think I forgot to say this during the presentation. This is the first large-scale mass timber building in New York City. Right? This building is made of mass timber. But you can't put mass timber on the outside of a building for fire code purposes. So it's on the inside of the building. So you have to invite people in, and then you have to talk to them about it and engage them about it. So yes, we take it very seriously. No, we haven't figured out how to do that yet, but we will.
Okay, awesome.
So if I could add in, So I think part of it is we're thinking hard. We still have time, but we're thinking about, again, the displays that we can be using that are intended to engage people. If you go to the Natural History Museum and you look at what they call the climate wall, it's essentially, a big multimedia presentation. It's incredible.
Yeah, it is.
And it's highly interactive, and you can say, well, I want to do it for this part of the world or that part of the world. And then the scientific information will change as a result.
Yeah.
So there are those kinds of displays that we can be baking into, again, ground level presentations. We also just heard about something in Stockholm. It was moved, but there were art installations adjacent to the river that told you about harbor conditions in Stockholm. Again, the water quality and things like that, but it was done through a series of lights that, there would be something that would translate, lights up here mean one thing, lights down there mean another thing. And so there are interesting ways that we can begin to do some of this as public art as well, in addition to more straightforward educational displays.
Yeah.
So, yeah, lots of ways we can do that.
That's exciting. Then the other thing was, in terms of the lagoon that you were talking about, so I think a whole bunch of us are very, obsessed with like the potential to toe dip in the water because we have so much water all around us down here. And so I was curious, are there opportunities to toe dip? Can you create an opportunity to toe dip? And why not?
Yeah. We're happy to come back with the engineers who will talk about that, but it's what happens is the depth drops off very dramatically because it's been dredged so many times. And so just a few feet off the island, it goes down very far, and so they have very fast currents, and it sort of pulls people out. So we would love to be able to bring people down to the water. But
That lagoon looked like a
it's not
nice
safe.
safe spot.
Yeah, it looks like, it definitely looks like it.
Andrew,
And we're happy to talk about it.
Andrew, if I could just add, the Trust for Governors Island is coming to executive committee next week to give a broader presentation just about other projects, but we are looking at another TODIP location, thanks to some city council funding that we have, so more to come there.
Oh, okay, exciting. I have more questions, but we're only allowed two, so.
I just have a question about construction. So I think in your last slide, you said construction is anticipated to be completed in 2029.
Yes.
And that's like on the conservative side of things, right? I mean, that's the short end. I mean,
Yeah, well, we think it's
it'll
about,
probably take longer than that.
no, we think it's about a 30-month
Really?
construction project.
Okay.
Yes, because the buildings aren't that big. The tallest one is only 4 stories, and so mass timber actually goes up very fast.
Okay.
It's really like hit aparts. So we don't, and the renovation, again, it's not, that wouldn't take 3 years. So we're very optimistic. Obviously, everyone's very optimistic at the beginning of a project, but we think 3 years is a good.
So how much of the island do you anticipate being closed? What parts of the island?
So that's a great question.
Yeah.
It's, obviously all the material has to be barged in and then it has to cross over the Esplanade. And so we will be working with the Governor's Island Trust to have the least impact that we possibly can, to try to contain it as much as we can. And the good news right now is that the area that we'll be building in is currently not available to the public
Right.
anyway. It's all behind the fence. I think the big challenge is gonna be how do we get things from the water side
Yeah.
to the site without dramatically disrupting people's experience there.
Right.
And Andrew,
Minimizing the impact.
just add,
Yeah.
the park and open space on the southern portion of the island will not close. for
Right.
construction, period.
But like, what about the transportation to and from? Like, just the least amount of impact to
No impact to
Minimizing-
the very
minimizing-
schedule.
yeah, okay.
We'll be working.
do that. That will be.
Yeah, we studied this
priority.
extensively during the EIS and ULERT phase, but we will work very closely with the exchange to mitigate impacts and just like we do today. But, the harbor school
Right.
construction has started, infrastructure projects ongoing and we're able to.
You're able to.
adopt it transport in the park.
Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna bring all the materials in, all the construction materials in through an industrial pier that's gonna
Okay.
fit. It's not gonna be in conflict with the,
Okay.
the passenger pier.
Paul or Wendy, do you have any questions online?
I was just going to make a remark that, the obvious unspoken issue is how the new Washington administration is going to respond to all this because their values are are different than their predecessors. So that's yet to be seen.
Don't say that.
Yeah, I think there's general agreement on that, Paul.
Yeah, that's it. There's no answers yet.
Right.
I just had a small question. How long do you think it's going to be before the pictures that you showed us with the trees? I mean, those trees looked really mature. What does that picture look like? Is that 20 years out? Is that, because I mean, I can't imagine that when it opens, it's going to look anything like the images you showed us. And it does look,
That's true.
by the way.
It does look what?
Beautiful.
Oh, good. No.
But
Um,
it seems like it's 20 years or 30 years out.
I don't think it's 20 or 30 years. I think we're looking at a variety of different kinds of trees, some faster growing, some smaller, some slower growing. We're looking at putting in large caliber trees to begin with. But yeah, you're probably right. It's probably about 10 years out that you'd be looking at those sorts of images.
Okay, thank you.
Just one more question.
I'd like to get the gentleman in the corner and then I'll come back to our table.
Hi, everyone. I'm Roger Manning from Magic, the Metro Area Bonus Island Coalition. Folks I haven't met. It's nice to see you all. And a community group that's basically concerned with general public use of Governor's Island. Keeping it as green and open, green and as open and as public and as low rise as possible. And basically, the three principles early on in the slideshow align with most what Magic's interested in. And we're somewhat encouraged by the direction that this project has been taking since when the first images we saw to greater degree of building reuse and this kind of thing. Questions? Yeah, the height of the larger part of the roller coaster, which is wondering about that, but also you're not going to use the theater after all. That was earlier plans.
That's a great question. Yeah, no, unfortunately, sorry,
And I'm almost done, sorry. And by the way, in terms of touching a lot of get downs, Magic has a couple of spots that we got from New York Waterfront that they had a suggestion for where that could actually safely happen. I don't finally see it on our map or their map. But the other thing is that Grow NYC and New York Bird Alliance doesn't seem to be in your list of partners. There are two key groups,
The Grow NYC is one of our partners, so, yeah.
The theater turned out to be the actual lowest lying building, because you enter at a low level and then it goes down. And so we looked at that, but we found that the flood proofing challenge there was too dramatic in order to be able to really invest in it to save it. So we like it. We think it's a great building. We think for a convening space, it's great. It also doesn't serve the convening needs that we have. It's much smaller than what we need, and it doesn't really have the sort of modern facilities associated with it. So for those reasons, with the trust to say we would prefer to build a new convening center rather than to try to renovate that. But that was certainly our first goal, but it just didn't work out.
So sorry, let's get your original questions answered and I really need to get around.
No,
I think you asked about the height of.
Yeah, did you have that? If I can read that. Yeah, 85. It's like the tallest one is 85 feet. Yeah, yeah, and the second, and the north, the north one is 85 feet. It's 4.
We wouldn't lower that height.
And the second one is at 65.
Francis?
Just curious what's the distance, how long will it take me to get from the ferry to the center? About 10-minute walk?
No, it's right there. It's literally
So,
right.
okay.
Well, from
So you're the first thing I see when I get off.
from Yankee Pier. Yeah,
Okay.
from the Yankee Landing, we're right.
That's what I thought.
Pier Plaza.
But from Pier 11, or like.
From
Other side, Brooklyn side is different.
Yeah.
Yeah, Brooklyn side's much clearer. Well, also, I think.
We have a lot of stuff.
But from the Manhattan side, was about a 10-minute walk.
Yeah, about a 10-minute walk, and the goal is always to use both Swanson's, which is probably the pier most folks in this room would come into from Lower Manhattan.
Yeah.
That will always be in service. Yankee Pier, we are looking, as Andrew mentioned, we're in design to expand the number of boats that can land at that pier. So we would be running boats from both Brooklyn and Manhattan, passenger only ferries.
Yeah, one of the challenges with Swanson's, as you know, is it's both a ferry, it's a passenger and a vehicular ferry. And so Yankee is only pedestrian. And so you don't have that conflict built in, which is nice.
Anyone else have any follow-on questions? Richard and then Rosa? Again, let's try and limit it if we can.
Yeah. So I'm wondering what the connection is time-wise, let's say, between the construction of the building and the beginning of programming, the beginning of research, the beginning of support for issues out in the world. And one example comes to mind, which is New York's Local Law 97 and the issues around that, which are enormous in terms of implementation. And are you in any way involved with it? Do you plan to get involved with it in this timeframe? Have you been asked to be involved with it that way?
So let me answer the first question, which was timing of the programming. Yeah, it's already begun. So part of our public programming started last year during Climate Week. You may be familiar that in collaboration with the Trust, Building 309, the old Our Lady Star of the Sea church, was converted into a facility that can be used for events. And so we held over 20 events during Climate Week last year that ranged from community activities that were engaging kids to scientific discussions to policy-focused discussions. We had debates in there. We had international experts coming into our programming. We'll be doing that again Climate Week this year. April 23rd and 24th, we're also having much more of a scientific focused research conference. It's really intended more for the scientific community around New York. What's going on, who's already metering certain kinds of environmental conditions or marine conditions, because we wanted to start comparing notes. No one has really brought that scientific community together in the way that we're talking about doing this. So we want to do that because that'll inform if there's some type of additional instrumentation we want to put on the island or elsewhere around the city. How can the data sets be connected in a systematic way? How can they be made more publicly available? All of that is going to be the focus of the April conversation. Other activities that we're already in conversations with different stakeholder groups mean there may be other programming on the island over the course of this year. We're talking with some of the partners about some of the child-focused programming that they do. Can that be expanded? Can it be turned into more of a climate conversation? So we're exploring that as well. That's events, that's conversation. In terms of some of the work, I already mentioned that in 3 weeks, we're having this conversation with NYCHA about, and I'm convening a group of experts from around the country focused on how can we use these carbon credits or the possibility of carbon credits to advance their decarbonization agenda in NYCHA campuses. That's one. Today's Wednesday, Tuesday. Thursday evening, we have an event that we started last year with the support of one of the banks on Wall Street. We've started an event targeting young professionals, young finance professionals, to help elevate their knowledge, familiarity with climate finance issues. This will be the second in the series. We're not going to have quarterly programming for that community. Again, it's getting a lot of attention across the Wall Street banks. We've now had interest internationally. Can we expand this? And so we're talking about building out an entire virtual training platform, plus in-person events, plus an ongoing community of practice to really help transform the financial community so that they're much more attentive, not to ESG issues, but pure climate finance. There are certain kinds of financing mechanisms that are available internationally across the global south. I used to work at the World Bank before I came back to New York to join the exchange. the interest across, many of my old colleagues that we can create a hub here, we can create programming here that can be in service internationally. The interest is off the charts. So very exciting. Again, it's something that they say you can do in New York because you've got proximity to Wall Street. You've got the diplomatic community up the East River at the UN. We can leverage all of that. And that's how we're building out a program. So you get a sense, some very local, some local that can expand internationally, and some of it's going to be pure international because we're getting interest from a variety of different states.
Is this held on the island?
Which,
The Thursday evening?
no, that's going to be at 7th World Trade.
And is this something that's fee-based, that the companies are paying somebody for the?
That is, we have sponsorship from one of the banks to pay for this, and the young professionals can attend for free. Yeah.
Thanks.
Rosa?
So love the idea of working with NYCHA. I hope that the residents of NYCHA are also participating and it's not just the admit. Excellent. And then the other thing is just following up on Richard's question about programming while you're waiting for the actual construction to be completed. Engagement, are you working with our youngest community members, our kids in our, elementary schools, like 276 and 150 are just, a boat ride away. Same thing with tech. But are you engaging with Sesame Street? I met a Muppet recently and I'm wondering, I feel like there's a lot of anxiety in our younger set about how we've sort of fucked things up a lot. And how can they have a real voice and a role in actually fixing things? And so yeah, that's my question.
So yes, I can't talk about everything yet. We have had a conversation with Children's Television Workshop. That is still, who knows where that'll go. But I mean, Sarah, do you want to talk about the main event with the Board of Ed?
Sure, yeah, so DOE last year hosted their Youth Climate Summit on Governor's Island for the first time. It was a really amazing event, thousands of students from all 5 boroughs talking about climate change, talking about their own projects in school. Billy and Oyster Project, one of our long-term tenants, hosts student symposium every year. They work with middle schools all over the city, really teaching them community science. Students work on their own projects. They get the opportunity to showcase. I've been a judge at the student symposium. It's one of the most inspiring things I've ever been to. So I think a lot of that work is happening, and the exchange has been really committed to helping expand K-12 programming on the island. Harbor School, the public high school located on the island, which is expanding as a key partner of this Billy and Oyster Project. So I think the exchange's presence is really just going to allow that, what's already happening, to evolve. And then similarly, we also have been working with El Puente, environmental justice organization based in Williamsburg. This is a trust project, but we're launching a DOE focused middle school and elementary school field trip program all about climate solutions. So as the exchange works on ramping up their program.
If I could just jump in, because one other point I wanted to make sure that not all of our programming will take place on Governor's Island. We are, again, when we had the conversation with the Chambers of Commerce several months ago, and we were talking about the city's, the city has something called the NPCC. It's the New York City Panel on Climate Change. It's been around for 16 years. It's had 4 different reports that were published. And how many of you have ever heard of it?
I didn't know about it until today.
Okay. So very few people have ever heard of it. And we're saying, okay, that's a problem. So how can we get this out? Because as I was talking to the chamber, I said, well, they have all kinds of materials related to flooding, and maybe the small business community would be interested in knowing more about this. And, NYU and CUNY have created something called FloodNet, which are these low cost sensors, and, it's a data sharing platform. And we're saying, maybe we should just bring some of that to one of your chamber events, and we can talk to the small business community in each borough. And so there's interest in that. So we're trying to figure out what to do. We've also got CUNY as our partner, one of our academic partners. to have 25 campuses for the price of one. And, so we did a Climate Week event at Brooklyn College last year. We're going to be doing stuff with Hunter. We're talking to City College. We're talking to Lehman. We're talking to Queens College. These are things that we'll be able to do to broadcast programming around the city, in addition to everything we're going to try and do on the other side.
Awesome.
Great, Eric?
In the renderings, will you have additional restrooms as well as water fountains for people just not, not doing business in the buildings, but they'll be in the outside area so they can be comfortable?
We're building two sets of restrooms.
Yeah.
Two sets of publicly facing restrooms. One is at the Yankee Pier Plaza area in one of the new buildings, and the other is at the Liggett Courtyard area.
And they'll have water fountains as well?
I think so. Yes.
Great. So if I can just close it out with a couple of questions. You mentioned ESG. Is that an angle into the corporate community?
So the Wall Street Forum on Thursday night, it's on ESG.
Okay.
And again, so one of the things that as we're engaging with different corporate partners, I mean, they're all in the midst of a bit of an adjustment, shall we say, for the point that was raised earlier. What we're talking about is even amidst all of that, we know there is demand to work on Local 197 to finance building efficiency upgrades. That is a big financing opportunity here in New York. The cost of capital is high, however. So one of the things that I'm trying to think about is how can we take some of the ideas that have been used internationally and bring them to New York and create different kinds of I don't want to use the term subsidy, but concessional capital that might drive down the cost a bit and make it more affordable, and thus accelerate the uptake of some of these technology transformations. So, we're thinking very hard about what is going to engage people. One of the issues that, again, if I only do a corporate ESG initiative, shame on me.
Sure.
Because I'm intended to engage on issues that are relevant to the community. So I can be talking to community development finance institutions at the same time, who are really going to be focused more on not just delivering big money for big capital projects, but small projects that are going to benefit individual homeowners or property owners or business owners in this community.
Right. Thank you. And then, apologies if I missed this. What is the organizational hierarchy between the exchange and the trust? Is there one?
We are a standalone 501c3 nonprofit organization.
Okay.
And we are leasing space from the trust.
So there's a tenant-landlord relationship, but organizationally, you don't roll up to the trust as your parent.
No, that's correct.
No.
Okay. And then I guess final question, comment. We might not have exhausted everyone's question tonight. Where do we bring questions?
Email.
Regarding the exchange? Email you?
I mean, yeah. I mean,
Is there a Sarah
I'll drop
K
us some
at,
cards.
or Sarah K at the exchange?
No, we have a head of communications, but again, first off, please sign up for the updates. Come to our website, it'll tell you where to sign up, and then we're setting out program, nyclimateexchange.org.
Did we put a link on?
And, we want people to be learning about what we're doing, because we want to make sure that if there's an event in Brooklyn or that people have the opportunity to join. If it's, providing input, feedback to us, then yes, we have how to reach out to us as well on our website.
Is this something that we should be having a relationship directly with the community board and you all, or is this something we can count on you at the trust to provide, or how do we?
Well, so, Sarah, just to expand on that, I was going to suggest, I wanted to check with Paul. I don't want to over-engineer this, but I think having you come back quarterly to speak with us, talk about your progress. Again, I don't know if it's the trust and or the exchange. I'm thinking it's perhaps the exchange, but I think that could be a good idea, good starting point for creating more communication and collaboration. Sorry, Alice, that's where I was.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great idea. I'm looking again to Sarah because, we do need some sort of conduit. So you're saying there's two conduits now?
Yes,
You all and.
very much like the other tenants we have on Governor's Island, like Lower Manhattan Cultural Counselor and Billy and Mister Project. The exchange is a tenant on Governor's Island. Obviously, we put out this vision. They are our anchor partner, so we are working extremely closely together, but they're implementing the project and they're leading. So if you have a general Governor's Island question, come to me.
Right.
I think Steve, Andrew, it'd be good to get the community board a contact, whether it's Elaine or Lauren.
Yeah.
Or Mike, who's in the team, just to answer questions, but yes, the exchange will be leading presentations with our support moving forward.
Got it.
Okay, that's good. So just to make sure that you, well, everything and all these updates and newsletters are sent to the board, including board one.
Yeah,
We will provide.
so that's easy. Just sign up and it'll come right to your mailbox. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you for that.
On behalf of the committee, thank you very much, very informative, very insightful, and exciting, as Alice said. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks very much.
We have one more topic.
No, I liked it. No, I liked it.
Just give us 2 minutes to,
I like it.
do the transition.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks so much.
You want to
Thank
keep
you.
going. Yeah, water.
Soon. Thank you.
So that's the.
Or not have to lost. You want to.
Right. So we're just transitioning, give us 30 seconds, and then we will move to our next topic.
Oh, yes.
Eddie, thank you for waiting patiently. Appreciate it. Now, get updates from Ranger. Was it Ranger Jim?
No, Ranger Jim.
Yeah,
Jimmy,
is he still with the?
he is.
Good.
He actually got a promote.
Oh, fantastic.
Well, that's why you haven't been able to reach out.
He got a promotion.
All right, so we're gonna pivot to our second and last topic, which is an update on the African Burial Ground Memorial Foundation. Eddie, how do you pronounce your last name? Forgive me? Gahadar?
Close, Gadgetar.
Gadgetar.
Yeah.
Or Jay.
It's-
So guys, if we pay attention, we're giving Eddie the floor, please.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
I'm okay here?
Yes.
Just speak towards the owl.
Sure.
If you want to sit right there.
I'm not sure why everyone's not sitting where we're all facing, like over here, so we can look at you. That's even better. Yeah.
Is that better? Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Perfect. Okay. So, thank you for having me.
Welcome.
Was here in 2021 with Linda Hamilton. And we presented, at that point, the African Burial Ground Memorial Foundation was not in existence. And we were attached to and presented on behalf of the Cultural Museum of African Art. There was a concept to create a larger museum space for the Cultural Museum of African Art, the Eric Edwards Collection at 22 Reed Street. Since that time, I think it was back in 2007 or 8, the National Park Service asked Rodney Leone. Rodney Leone is the architect of the African Burial Ground National Monument. He's also the architect of the Ark of Return that sits in the United Nations Plaza. And he's also the architect of the Cultural Museum of African Art in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. And that's where him and I met. And we worked on that project together to build that out. Some state dollars were involved through the Speaker of the Assembly, Carl Hastie. And, we like to move expeditiously. So they told us 3 to 5 years to register the grant. We did it in 11 months. They told us 5 to 7 years to build it out. We did it in 7.5 months. And Rodney and I were laughing about this just the other day. We were kind of motivated. We're a little motivated. So we're still, kind of going through the paperwork with the state to kind of clean things up. But, we're almost, in terms of the Cultural Museum of African Art, it's the first, just by the way, it's the first museum in the city of New York purely dedicated to African artifacts, art, culture, history, right? Of course, you have African artifacts throughout the city, but this is the only one that's solely and purely dedicated to African artifacts, art, culture, and history. And we're able to, thankfully, we're able to make that happen with the community. March, I wanted to kind of give you a little bit of history so you understand like how and why the foundation came about. Rodney was asked many, many times by National Park Service and Department of Interior to create a foundation, a conservancy. He just didn't have the capacity. And, slowly but surely over a few years, we saw how we kind of worked together. And then we included Rob Fields, who's the former president, CEO of Weeksville Heritage Center in Brooklyn, which is a SIG. Dr. Carolyn Pouts and Edward Foster. And the five of us, we co-founded the African Burial Ground Memorial Foundation in May of 2023. We worked with Congressman Goldman and Congressman Espaillat and Senator Gillibrand to see if they can provide letters of support, which they did for the foundation. We were able to expedite that process. So by December of 23, we were able to get our official IRS determination letter. They gave us a huge packet, you know, the Department of Interior and National Park to complete in order to then become the official philanthropic partner with National Park Service and DOI. Completed that, and then we got our official philanthropic agreement in place September 20th, 2024. So just again, just moving expeditiously. They told us, NPS said 3 years plus. We did in a year and a half, right? It's just about, let's just get the job done, right? Let's get the job done because there's so much work to be done, right? And this is good work. This is philanthropic work. We're not paid salaries, right, to any of this, right? It's just good work for the community. So that's how we got to where we are. Some of the activities, even before we were the official philanthropic partner, we created a sister partnership between Gorée Island in Senegal and the national and the United States, right? So part of the national monument here, right on the corner of Elk and Duane Street, Rodney designed what's called the door of return. So there's an above ground chamber, right? And there's something called the door of return, right? When you walk through. In Gorée Island, where our ancestors came from, the last place that they left, the last door they walked out of in Gorée Island, Senegal, was called the door of no return. I see you mouthing it like you.
There,
Oh, I see.
in April.
Were you in Gorée Island?
I walked through that door.
Yeah. So we helped to facilitate an international agreement even before we were the official philanthropic partners between Senegal and the United States. You know, there's some relationships that, you know, that we had, right? Rodney had, I had, and other folks in our group had, and we were able to do that. There was a signing December of 23, you know, inside of 290 Broadway over here. Rep Goldman, I believe, was there at the signing. So that was 23. We also advocated because there was some of the stonework on the ancestral chamber had become cracked, and there was fear that the marble would fall off. So we advocated on behalf of the Park Service. Park Service has a difficult job. They have a very, very difficult job, you know, lack of funding. So that's why they were really pushing for us to create this philanthropic partner, because we can do things outside of the federal government that they can. And with this new administration, it's even more difficult. I mean, their hands are just tied right now. And it was challenging before, but now it's like they can barely do anything. They were in fear that Black History Month wouldn't be recognized. Like that, I mean, literally, like we just didn't know, you know, and like a few days before, it was like, oh yeah, okay, we're okay. We can actually do things
This year.
this year. Who knows what's gonna happen next year, right? It just really highlights the import of the foundation again, right? Because we can do things that potentially the National Park Service cannot, right? So we just so we advocated for that funding through National Park, through Congressman Goldman, Espaillat, and we were able to secure, again, even before we were official, right? Even before we were incorporated as a nonprofit, right? And we got them to reallocate approximately $2 million for the emergency work needed, right, for the restoration of the ancestral chamber. Last Tuesday, there was a small ceremony at the burial ground.
reopening, 2+ years, reopening the ancestral chamber. Right, so we had a small ceremony, national parks participated, but we had to lead the way, like, it was our announcement. They couldn't even make the announcement, they weren't allowed, which is, you know, kind of where we are in this moment, right? And we just have to be able to work with that. Today, there was, I just walked over from another event. Today was a joint event with NPS, the US District Court, Culture Now, I think it's called the Manhattan Historic District or Association, Lower Manhattan Historic Association, is that right?
Yes.
Right? They had a tour of the interpretive center at 290, and then Rodney was there, Rodney and I were there. Rodney's the president of the board, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention, Rodney's the president of the foundation. I'm the secretary of the, board secretary of the foundation. Rob Fields is the treasurer. So Rodney provided an outdoor tour today. And then at 5, they had a symposium in the district court. Right, so I left those 3 events, came straight here. It is, man, is it cold. You know, it was okay for me to go second because I was just sitting there just trying to warm up this whole time, right? Are y'all familiar with EEAP? Education Equity Action Plan Coalition? No? So it was funded starting in 2021. The 21, the city council, the Black, Latino, Asian caucus gave $10 million to a coalition comprised of Teachers College, Eagle Academy, United Way New York City, Black influencers, and ABNY, Association of Black Educators New York. And they gave them $10 million in 21, 10 in 22, and then 5 in 23 to create the first ever Black Studies curriculum for this entire city of New York, right? Of course, they worked with, now it's New York City Public Schools, no longer, I wanted to say Board of Ed because I'm dating myself. Board of Ed, DOE, now it's public schools. They worked in conjunction with and in partnership with to create this curriculum that will then be disseminated throughout. So in February 29th of last year, you know, we asked the National Park Service, Rodney and I, and our foundation to create a space within 290 Broadway so they can announce this curriculum to the city. And it was just a wonderful presentation. The chancellor was there. At the time, it was David Banks. So it was just a wonderful announcement, right? An acknowledgement of the contributions, right? Not just of one group, right? There should be a celebration of every group, right? Every group, because we all participated in this this experiment, as they say, right? So that was in February of last year. We have worked with Representative Goldman's office and Jill Brand's office. They will be reintroducing the bill. I don't know if you're familiar with the bill it's called the African Burial Ground International Museum and Education Center Act. Right, so in the 118th Congress, HR 1349, and on the Senate side, it's Senate 527 of the 118th Congress. In 2023, they reauthorized the act, which was introduced initially by Chuck Schumer and by Jerry Nadler. Thank you. Before redistricting, right? So when they did redistricting, that came about 22, 23. Goldman took office. He took the reins on that. They reintroduced it, and for the first time in 2023, they actually provided funding in the legislation. And they put in $15 million. But it was very, very restrictive, right? So we advocated for a change in language to make it, you know, to allow for the monies to be used. Because you can't go from 0 to a museum that's gonna cost hundreds of millions of dollars, right? It's gonna be a Smithsonian, right? The next Smithsonian, right? It's gonna cost in this, especially in this area, hundreds of millions of dollars to build out. There has to be this marketing piece, this community engagement piece, this education piece. So that's what we advocated for, right? To be able to do all the things from a community level, the education of our students, of our seniors, and everyone in between, right? That's where we're starting. We're starting grassroots to be able to get to the end goal, because you can't go from 0 to 100. It just doesn't jive, right?
Can I ask a question? I'm sorry, I followed this pretty closely, actually brought it to the board's attention many years ago. So I'm not understanding something, and I haven't for years. I've spoken to Goldman's office a lot about this over the years.
Yeah.
And I was sort of introduced to this concept of this foundation. There seem to be many ideas about this museum. My understanding was that 22 Reed Street exists as a city-owned property and that it was identified, now we're going back years, as this building begins to deteriorate, as a very intelligent site adjacent to the actual burial ground to become New York Center for the Smithsonian for this museum. That to me is the mission and has been the mission for so many years. You're hearing a little impatience in my voice because I don't understand why this isn't yet happening, why $15 million ain't nothing, isn't being used by, I guess, your organization to begin to just concentrate on that as the goal, or is that no longer the goal of your foundation? I guess I want to understand where that museum, it's such a wonderful idea that New York should capitalize on the most critical part of our history in that location. And we have a site owned by the city of New York for free, potentially, why that isn't being pushed forward. And every year I ask, there's a very, I get almost a feeling like stand back.
Sure.
Okay, so maybe if you don't mind addressing that, I'm sorry to jump in.
I was gonna get there, but I'm glad you did. We're amongst friends, right? I can talk freely?
Yeah, no. Is that your mission?
The long and short is that is our mission, that is our preference, to be in 22 Reed Street. There is a ton of bureaucracy, to say the least. We all know it, right? And there's also this sense of like territory. Like, this is my territory, this is mine. And that building is run by DCAS. So we've met with
What is that exactly?
Department of Citywide Administrative Services, right? So this building is run by DCAS. Like, when you walk into the building, you'll see on the banisters, you'll see it's draped with DCAS. When you walk out, you'll see it tonight, right? DCAS, they run most of the buildings. All the security that's provided, that's DCAS, right? The cleaning service, all of it is DCAS, right? Any of the capital projects, it's all DCAS throughout the city. Brooklyn Borough Hall, DCAS, right? So we didn't meet with DCAS, but we met with City Council member Marte. We're all in alignment on this, right? It makes sense. This is what makes sense to everyone. We need a sign off from either the mayor, or we need to just go through the full ULURP process. But at the end of the day, that is our mission, that is our goal.
So I don't mean to shortcut this.
Absolutely, 100%.
I don't mean to shortcut this conversation, it's all relevant, but are we perhaps moving down a path where we as a committee consider a resolution, maybe it's dusting off an old resolution to
We
try
have a
to.
resolution.
Can I speak to the resolution?
Let me just say something
Go.
here on this. I think we have to be very careful because, and Paul will remember, we did already write a resolution not so many years ago, and that was for this African museum that had a different name. And again, you're
That's
talking
what I
about
mentioned.
African. It's very different than the Smithsonian's idea of a satellite museum in the city. And you've described a cultural African museum. Is it the African art collection of this person that we were asked to advocate for the last time? I think we need some clarity before I'm going to be comfortable to write and approve a resolution. And maybe we need something in writing from your foundation to understand, or at least I would love to see it.
Sure.
Are you a 501c3 or
We are.
501c4? Okay.
501c3.
Okay, so just like what it is in writing what this is, and then maybe we come back to it the next time, if that's okay? 'Cause
Yeah.
I'm not sure we're there yet.
So just for clarity, when Linda and I presented here in 2021, and I alluded to this, right? Where there was no foundation, right? There was no African Burial Ground Memorial Foundation. What we had was another 501c3, and the vision at that moment, at that time, was to create an African art and cultural center and pair it and tie it with the legislation, but have the the Cultural Museum of African Art as the anchor tenant. That was what we advocated for in 2021. But now that we have this entity, this foundation, everything is in alignment. We are the official philanthropic partner with the National Park Service, right? So now everything makes sense with us being the philanthropic partner, working with Representative Goldman, working with Senator Gillibrand, working with within the proper framework, right? We can still work with the Cultural Museum of African Art as an anchor tenant, but they would be a tenant. They would not be the actual, say, landlord, right? The landlord would either be the National Park Service, or it would be the foundation, right?
It's, to me, the lack of clarity here is that, there was a Smithsonian Museum that exists in Washington DC with extraordinary staff and understanding of programming. And then there's this cultural museum of African art that wants to somehow combine itself in this building. That is still unclear to me personally, and I feel like it muddies what I think is the really critical objective in putting an African history museum in the city of New York, beyond the interest of one group of people's cultural artifacts, of art-related stuff. There are two different things going on there.
Okay.
That's what
I'll try to simplify it.
the meeting.
No, I'll try to say, I tried just now, but I'll try again, because clearly I'm not doing a good job. It's on me, right?
Well, I think if you had a statement written, it would be very
Sure.
helpful also, but
Yeah.
I won't say anything else.
No.
Sorry.
I want you to say it. I want you to
Sorry,
say it.
Andrea.
So again, the Cultural Museum of African Art is not who we are representing. We are representing the African Burial Ground Memorial Foundation. We are the foundation, and we are the advocates for the creation of the African Burial Ground International Museum and Education Center as outlined in federal legislation. Full stop. That's it. Full stop.
Preferably in that building.
Preferably at 22 Reed, because, was it Alice?
Yeah.
Okay, good. As Alice stated, it just makes sense. It's adjacent to the burial ground. Rodney already has visions of, creating, kind of blowing out the first floor, putting, having glass so you can see from Chambers Street straight through 22 Reed and onto the burial ground, right? Creating this beautiful space. It's a large building, right? With all types of, possibilities for programming, educational programming, and the like.
Can I make a suggestion? I'm talking even though I said I would. Maybe the way to handle this is that you come back with the statement written, with the architect, Rodney, who I've heard a lot about, with the drawings of what this would look like for the Reed Street location. And then we've got something to really go with. And I'm sure that this committee and this board would probably look very favorably on.
Yeah.
So I think that might be a better approach. I don't want to take.
And we need to make sure we're in alignment with Goldman and Gillibrand and Marte, so that we're all asking for the identical things, and support.
Yeah. So we're not at that point. We're relatively new. So we're not at the point where we have renderings. We weren't coming in here for an ask, right? We were just coming in here to provide an update as to what our activities were, right? And just for, again, we're amongst friends, so we can speak freely. At the end of the day, we're working towards all of these things, right? We don't want to have, if we don't have our ducks in a row, we're not going to make an ask. That's not fair to you all, right? It doesn't make any sense, and we wouldn't do that. again.
Okay, when you're ready, you'll let us
Be
know.
here.
Mm-hmm.
Say again?
He was saying when you think you're ready with an ask.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
I was wondering, if it's currently being managed by DCAS, what is the occupancy of the building now? Who, you said either NPS or your organization would take over the building, would that be as a sale of the building or a transfer, I guess, but even if it was NPS, it passes from city hands, so then it would have to be some sort of a transfer mechanism. How,
Yeah, I'd like to sort of carry on to that question that is related. What are the obstacles? You started to talk about DCAS. What are the obstacles to taking over that building? I think that's very related to what you're
Yes.
asking.
Yeah, so DCAS has possession, the building is being underutilized. I believe only city planning is in the building.
Not anymore.
It's,
But-
they're gone. Well, we
So
were
the
just
building
told,
is
we were
empty.
just told, I'm just saying, just like a couple weeks ago, that city planning was still in there. So-
I could.
Prior to a couple weeks
don't know
ago,
for sure.
prior to a couple weeks ago, we had the same information as you, Alice, that the building was empty,
Empty.
right? And no one was in the building, no tenants, right? No city tenants. And a couple weeks ago, we were told, city planning was still in there, right? The information is still jumbled. Again, this is why, we came here just to provide an update as to, where we are. We're a brand new 501c3, right? We're still trying to figure out all these pieces because we don't have all the answers. We're having meetings with city, state, federal officials elected, and we're trying to put all the pieces together because there's been a vacuum for so many years, right? And no one has been asking these questions, and now we're asking the questions. To be honest, we're getting a lot of pushback, right? Because these questions weren't asked before, and all of a sudden, like, who are you folks, right? And well, we're the philanthropic partners, and we're just trying to do the best we can for the community to get this thing done. Right?
Any sense of timing? And again, I appreciate it's new and
Sure.
any sense of timing when you might have sort of a sense of an ask and be ready to move forward on that?
Yeah, well, the new legislation is going to be presented to Congress February 24th. Right, that updated legislation with more flexibility. If we have the ability to access some of those funds within, if it's written according to what they provided, who knows, right? What the final version is gonna be, then I think we have a better sense of, kind of next steps for us, right? Because without flexibility in funding, it's gonna be very difficult to accomplish all of these grassroots goals and aspirations. But again, we're here to fundraise. I don't have the answer right now. I have to wait until it's introduced to see what the final version looks like. There will be a press conference sometime next week. With I don't know if Gillibrand's gonna be there. I believe Goldman will be there. They're still in communication and deciding like what specific date. I don't have that because they haven't given it to me just yet. And then we can circle back.
And I don't know if this is a relevant question or not, but do you see this as a series of sequential steps or are there things that can run in parallel? Meaning advocating to gain access, ownership, whatever of 22 Reed while you're in parallel dealing with some of the other issues.
Yeah, so in parallel. Yeah. So all the community engagement stuff, educational programming, like I mentioned EEAP Coalition, like we're in partnership with them to bring all of our school kids, to the African Burial Ground from across the city. Right. We're working in partnership to try to help to bring attention to and light to the African Burial Ground National Monument. We're working on or advising on the African Burial Ground in Harlem, the one in Flatbush. There's a new one that was just discovered in Inwood, not Inwood, Far Rock, but Inwood, Upper Manhattan, right? So we're kind of trying to bring all these disparate pieces together, but the main hub is this African Burial Ground. It's a national monument. It exists already. So this is why, I should say, everyone keeps coming to Rodney and our foundation, because they want the guidance and the insight.
Great. Any other questions on the table, Richard?
There's an event this Saturday, Lower Manhattan Celebration of Black History Month at the museum. Are you participating in any way?
At which museum?
At the burial ground.
At the burial ground? 22nd. Oh, no. Ramon is the site leader, site manager here. He hasn't disseminated that information just yet publicly.
Wendy or Paul, anything online?
I'm good. I mean, to be continued.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Thank you very much for the update. I think you can tell there's a lot of passion for this project, and we just want to understand how we can help in any way possible.
Well, I really do appreciate the passion, the support from 2021. There was a unanimous resolution that, was, given, at that time. And again, we just look to continue the open lines of communication and providing as much information as we possibly can and being as open as we possibly can.
Thanks for all the work.
Thank you.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Great.
Thank you.
I think we are a wrap for this evening. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Great job.